One. Welcome back to another episode of the Strong Life Podcast. I know everybody says it. I say we've got special guests this time. This is episode 489, creeping up on episode 500. I've got the co-authors and friends of mine of the latest triphasic book, Dr. Mike T. Nelson, who I've known for 20 plus years, Cal Dietz, who I've known for a while. I don't know how long. We definitely met at a Sorinex event, if I'm correct, right, Cal?
I think so. Yes.
Yep. One time, little trivia, I met Kurt Hester, and I was thinking about this. He said, "Zach, where is the first time we met?" And I was like, I couldn't remember. And he's like, "Dude, I was in the truck with you. We got picked up in the airport on the way to speak at Georgia Tech." I was like, "I was high on Xanax. I don't remember." I was on like a brutal flight. It was like a Jedi simulator. And I was like, dang, I felt bad that I couldn't remember where I met Uncle Kurt. But we're going to have a great time chatting all things training. I want to talk nutrition and talk a little bit of life. So welcome, guys. Thanks for making some time from Minnesota.
Yeah, thank you.
Today.
Great to be here.
Great to be here. Guess what? Today is like 25 degrees in New Jersey. And all I said to myself is, where these guys are in Minnesota, it could be negative 25. So I can't really complain about it. What's the weather out there?
It was -8 the other morning. It's warming up, but we had a little bad stretch, like 4 or 5 days. So
I feel it in my bones when it's that cold. I don't know how you guys could still do it. Let me ask you guys something. Mike, I thought you had moved permanently to Texas, but you're going back and forth. It must be harder to go from that heat to the cold. It must I don't know, your body loses the durability to the cold. Is that what happens?
It's kind of weird. Like we came back, we left the end of October. We didn't get back to Minnesota till like around December 12th. And I remember on the drive back up, stopping a few places, and it was super windy and cold. And the first day I went for a walk after we got home, and I was just like, oh, this is horrible. It felt so much, and it wasn't even that cold. It was like 32 degrees or something, but compared to what I was used to, I definitely wasn't used to it. But it took like a couple of weeks, and I still have a little cold water immersion in the garage, so go sit in some 39-degree water, and everything else feels warm after that, so...
Are you guys, Cal, are you doing the cold water immersion to secure your place in Influencer Nation?
I do it. Yeah. I mean, only because I have free access to it, right? It's at the school. So when I come into work, I'll jump in. I don't always go up to my neck just because I'm like, well, I'd rather just get more dopamine scrolling through Instagram. So I'll just go up to my chest, right? And then get a double dopamine dump on the Instagram scroll or something. That's why I look at my social media. So I'll do it. But, I don't know if I feel anything from it, to be honest with you. I might feel a little bit more awake because, there's days where it takes my breath away and there's days that it doesn't. But, I do that. But ultimately, and then the other thing is here, I feel like when 3 days of hard cold, I got in the sauna and I got warmed up, man. And that just warms you to your soul, right? 180-degree sauna. So I feel pretty good. I think that just makes it more malleable to people up here if they have a sauna, right? Like that super cold weather. Because eventually it just beats on you after a couple of weeks. You're going, this is awful. You know what I mean? It just beats on you.
You think people are doing it for the mental benefit, or everybody responds to things differently? So what do you think is going on? Or are they just doing it for the gram?
Well, yeah, I don't know. It's just the sauna just kind of warms you up and gets that deep warm. Like, that this morning when you walked in, the cold was just unbearable, and it's even colder. If I get a sauna at work, which I'm fortunate at work, I can do that with this athletic background here. But you walk out and it's like that walk to your car isn't nearly as bad, even though you did this sauna an hour ago, right? So it's just a mental break, I think. So
what's, if we had to choose one, for example, I was telling my wife, I was like, we should just get a sauna, like a big one in the backyard. And she's like, no, just take a bath. And I was like, shit, I want a sauna. I'm not excited to get in the cold, But does that mean the cold is better for me? Is my nervous system too stimulated from always like lifting and like going?
Well, what I found over the years was sometimes it's day to day, right? So let's say your HRV is terrible, and I used the Omega Wave for a number of years, and I would track stuff. I tested about everything I could, from peanut butter and jelly sandwiches to various sauna protocols, and I just seem to be day to day. Like some people jump in and they get a horrible response, but the guideline for me was always that if it took your breath away in a cold tub, that means, and it didn't the day before, that means you're probably in a really stressed state. So really all you're doing is creating more stress hormones. That was my opinion, and that was a guideline. So if it took your breath away, you're probably in a stress state, right? And then it's probably not going to be as beneficial to you, at least in the whatever time of the year, whether you're training hard, whether, maybe in the middle of summer, it's not a big of a deal because you're not getting ready for competition. But if you're going to get it on a competition day and it takes your breath away, it may put you in a stressed state earlier that morning, that later in that afternoon, right? Like you just may have more cascade of poor hormones, is my opinion. Now, if you jump in, you feel great, and it makes you feel great, good. I think it's a good thing. I mean, that's just simplifying it as best I can.
Sure. Just going by what you feel.
I do the same thing. Like if people get in, and even if they've been doing it in a systematic way and they were supposed to do 3 minutes or whatever magical number it is, if they get in and they have a big gas reflex and they can't really get control of their breath right away, and it just feels worse than the day before, I'll probably tell them the same thing. Just get out, right? Because lower calories, higher stress, I've noticed all those things will change your perception to it. Same thing, looking at HRV the next day, because you are applying a stressor to the system. But same thing as Cal said, like if you get in, you feel good, you can get control of your breath. You kind of feel like this wave where it'll be initially harder for the first 30, 60 seconds, then it'll start to get easier, and then it'll start to get harder again. Kind of like on that second wave in general is where I tell people just get out before it gets really hard again. Because it's just like training, right? It's a stressor on your system. It can have some benefits, but you can go, too far and start to impair recovery too.
What about like just basics? Somebody's new to it. So for me, I don't have a cold plunge. I don't have a sauna, but I could just contrast shower. But when I get in the cold shower, I got to tell you, my body's like, it is like, but I don't track my HRV, but I do feel the typical busy strength coach, family guy, business owner of stress and being tired. And my buddy said something to me years ago. He said, dude, I don't even think you know what it's like to feel normal anymore. And I was like, shit, I think you might be right. I think he could be right.
100%. Yeah. Yeah. So you don't know what normal is, right? Like you're not normal. Obviously, we know that.
What's I'm really like that you brought up peanut butter jelly sandwich. I know in like you have courses on CoachTube, Cal, and you had like you were talking about in one of those courses, like for a lot of athletes, you're gonna actually have a peanut butter and jelly sandwich in their nutrition just for like some quick, simple, I guess semi-quality calories. And Mike, what is your program? Is it called the Flex Diet? Is that one of your programs?
Yeah, Flex Diet certification.
What do you think of? Let's just put it out there. I mean, I love a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, but I'm going through like a 6-week challenge where like it's trying to lock in. What are your thoughts on a PB&J for adults, not a college or high school athlete?
I mean, my bias is it all depends on the context. Like, what else were you gonna do? Like, if you were gonna skip something entirely, or go get fast food or something else, peanut butter and jelly is great. Also, do you really like it? Like, I've had some clients in the past where that literally was one of their favorite foods. Cool. Like, I'm probably not going to take their teddy bear away and tell them they just have to suck it up and white knuckle it. I'm probably going to find a way to keep it included. If you wanted other options, I would probably go something that's a little bit more higher protein, higher carbohydrate if it's before training. But again, it's all relative to what the athlete's going to do and what is, I guess, not really optimal, but what could be better for them. And then also the psychological aspect of, are they able to do it consistently? if they're not able to do it consistently, then, peanut butter and jelly sandwich they can do consistently is probably still going to win.
Are you guys with the cold weather for you yourselves? I think we're all around about same age. Are you guys gaining that winter weight just because of the changing in foods? Are you gaining 10 pounds in the winter?
For me, I try not to. I'm aware of it. Yeah, no, yeah. I've been really good, right? It helps if I go to bed hungry, and it's like the worst thing ever. But whatever I eat during the day seems to be okay. It's just as long as I go to bed hungry, I can at least lose weight when I try. You know what I mean? That's a tough one, right? But it's socially too. Like I have so many late team dinners at times, and traveling with the teams. There's so much food in the hotels. It's a struggle. It's just a little, for me, it's just, if I can go to bed hungry 5-6 days in a row, I start to lose weight. So
let's say today, Cal, is, what time is it by you guys? Like 3:15? Am I an hour ahead?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Have you eaten yet today, Cal? What's your day of eating look like?
Oh, my day would be, I don't know. I do fast some days until 10, 11. But it just depends. I have found if I'm stressed in the morning because I didn't get much sleep, blah, 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 and I'm more hungry, I just eat because I know, but I'll try to cut the calories down, right? I kind of go along with my stress levels, in that regard, because I have found when I'm in high stress and I fast, it's not like I'm losing it's not like it's good weight that I feel like if I do lose it, I feel like I get that skinny fat belly, the belly fat going versus, you know what I mean? And then, if I'm in a good spot and I'm not hungry, my coffee in the morning with some coconut oil and I actually throw bone broth in my coffee in the morning. You know what I mean? Yes. Just because I think it heals. I don't taste it too much. I get an organic bone broth, throw it in there. And not that I care about taste because nothing I eat like that would taste good anyway for most people. So my morning shake is awful. But, what is it? So I'll kind of, man, it's like I do raw eggs. Let's see. Yes. I buy a bunch of like herbs that are like organic herbs and pills, and I just take 5 of them from oregano, stuff that I normally wouldn't get, to like and then the like top like high antioxidants fruits such as different types of berries that are in pills or whatever. I throw 10 pills in my shake, and then my raw egg I'll throw. Right now I got goat whey protein just because I switch out my proteins a lot because eventually you just become allergic to, if you just, a lot of my kids have become resistant, like somewhat have a responsive allergy against like whey because they just get pounded with whey. So we try to change it up, right? So I'm using a goat whey protein, then a superfood mix, throw that in there. And, I might even throw my fish oil tablets in there so it tastes like fish. Like I'm just really bad. You know what I mean? And grind up my multivitamin with, I use digestive enzymes in that one too. So like if you've ever chewed those things, they're horrible. But I don't know. I feel like it's pretty good. And then I actually got some high quality methane blue I throw in there. Mike and I have talked about it before. And maybe I should be drinking that by itself, but I don't. I just throw my raw eggs. And I get my good eggs from like a farmer that all organic. The chickens have never ate anything but organic, like fermented feed and stuff like that. So, if I got some extra steak, I'll throw it in there in the morning from the night before. So whatever, it doesn't really matter. So.
I mean, well, 2 questions on that. Are you okay with sharing? What brand of protein is the goat whey?
I think the one I find is I think Swanson is one that Swanson brand supplements, right? I use that one just because I don't need to get drug tested. I'm not drug tested, thank God, like my athletes are. So it's not like it's one that athletes can use, you know what I mean? And I think pasture raised goat whey. And really, again, it's just to mix it up. Because even when I got off whey before at one time and jumped on a vegan protein and there was a lot of pea in it, I eventually, when I do my food allergy tests, I was creating some intolerance to the pea protein after 6 months, right, of taking it all the time. So it just seems like if I just switch up, when I go to a restaurant, if I see bison on the menu, I always order it just to trade out protein sources and make it more diverse, right? And I think Mike agrees with that. Wouldn't you agree, Mike?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen just a huge amount of variability, and the variability, like Hal was saying too, depends on stress levels. Like if I have someone who's had like the same type of protein for months and months and years on end, they're starting to have some GI issues. Yeah, I'm probably gonna, switch it out. If people want to do some type of rotation between different brands, different types, yeah, I think that's probably fine. The caveat I've noticed too, like I said, is stress levels make a big difference. So usually a lot of times if we can get their stress levels down, kind of clean up the rest of their nutrition, pull everything out that is kind of an irritant, get everything cleaned up. A lot of times you can add some of those things back in and they can be okay too. So some type of rotation like that can be useful.
Mike, does stress, especially as we get older, is that a contributor to us like struggling with fat loss, belly fat, the common belly fat for men 40s and 50s?
I mean, there's some truth to that. I mean, there is some truth to cortisol is a little bit more related to central adiposity, visceral fat, that type of thing. How much and how much that is related is kind of hard to say, but I've noticed that the patterns that people have when they're stressed, like just ask anyone when they're stressed, like, hey, did you do your normal training routine? Probably not. Like, how was your sleep? It's pretty shitty. Like, how
Mhm.
was your nutrition choices? Not very good, right? So everything else tends to get off of the rails at the same time that, ironically, they probably need all that other stuff to be even better than what it was at normal, right? Because you're putting the system under more load, more stress. So if anything, in a perfect world, you'd want more and higher quality sleep. You'd want higher quality and more nutrition. But usually you see it's the behavioral, it's the inverse, what sets you up for a lot of issues.
Yes, when I'm stressed, my sleep. I mean, I find myself waking up early, and then I'm like, oh, I remember hearing stories of quote unquote men as they get older, like always waking up at 4 a.m. So if I'm like
Hmm.
waking up early, I'm like, shit, is this because I'm getting older or because I'm just stressing and overthinking? Cal, with stress for athletes, what are you kind of giving them as a maybe a nighttime routine? Because I have this like theory that all athletes are just consistently operating at a deficit, because if you're in bed at 10:30, you're probably not going to bed till 11:30, midnight, 12:30, because they're on the phone. I feel like the phone has fucked up a lot of things in the world. I know it sounds crazy, but I just feel like, oh, I'm too busy. Well, you're on the phone for 4 to 8 hours, but at 2 minutes at a time. I can't go to bed
Right.
at night. Well, you're on the phone for 2 hours watching stuff that stimulates you and makes you crazy. What do you tell the kids at the school to try to
Yeah.
control that?
Well, the big thing is like that blue light, right? Try to make them aware of that blue light that's going to increase dopamine. Um, I've heard of and I've looked up and tried it with some people last spring, especially after the season, dopamine detox, where they just drop their social media and all the right,
Yes.
like because it's so yeah, right. So 3 or 4 days of that, if it's possible, which it could be possible, right? If a lot of my pros, I tell them, hey, blue light blockers on their TV so they can spend the $300 or per TV, right? Like that's a big one. Just change your habits. Get out in that evening sunlight like that. The big one I like is that they get out in the last hour of sunlight. So if sun sets at 7 o'clock, you got between 6:30 and 7:30 to make sure you get out there, because that'll help that circadian rhythms, right? Get in the right mode to kind of down regulate. And whether that, ideally, if that could be a walk after a dinner for 20 minutes outside in that sun, because and make sure you get up in the morning and get that sun in you to start all these processes so that the biological clocks are all in the right order, right? Like we have so many things that fight us on that, in regards to the right biology, the circadian rhythms that we should be following. And then the lights that we have in our home, like ideally you'd want full spectrum lighting. And then I know if you could have like the floor lighting in the evening so that the lights aren't on the ceiling, like no college kid can do this, but those are the type of things that I'd tell a pro, hey, if you're building a house, try to put the track lighting on the floors around things so you can shut the ceiling lights off at night. You know what I mean? Those are the things. And then watching what you're eating, because if you have a histamine response on some of the foods you eat at night, maybe you don't realize it, but you eat a pizza right? And you get a huge histamine response. That kind of stuff can just screw things up. And, there's a lot of variables throughout the day that can screw things up. But usually then you're tagging things on top of things, right? Because, hey, I'm stressed, I got an exam. Well, then I'm just going to eat a quick pizza at night. So you had the stress, the exam, the whole thing. You had a hard practice, and then you ate some gluten, a ton of gluten that your body doesn't respond well to. So, those are the kind of variables. And then let's say you did get to sleep at some point. Is the sleep going to be that good? Probably not, as we know, right? As I'm tracking sleep, right? I had a quad injury here not a few weeks ago, torn quad tendon, right? It wasn't even training. It wasn't even good. But
how'd you do that?
Slipped on some shit in the weight room, and basically my foot slipped across something as I was falling, and with my wrestling, I found the ground, I'm all good, and then all of a sudden my foot stopped instantly. And I actually tore my quad tendon when my foot slipped off the object that I stepped on and caught the rubber flooring, and it instantly stopped my foot, and then everything just tore. So, I was 10 days in pain, sleeping with a resting heart rate 25 beats higher than normal. Only 3 to 4 hours a night for those next 10 days.
Because of the pain? All right.
Yeah.
So this is interesting because I was going to ask you guys about injuries, and just for the people who are watching, we got Triphasic Training 2, which gets me super pumped up. I love to talk the training. So you're injured. I would assume that I'm talking to a doctor right now about BPC 157. I had those 4 knee surgeries, my shoulder, and I'm kind of at this age where I'm like, if there's this stuff available to just inject me and shit starts growing back like Wolverine, I need to stop being so resistant to being all natural and just use a little advantage. So why would you go in pain for 10 days when you have an injury? Is it good to let the body do what it's supposed to do, or should we seek outside help? And I'm talking about guys our age who are not being drug tested in sports.
Yeah. Well, so like the natural comment, you want to be natural, but we don't live in a natural environment, do we? You and I do not live, Mike. We're all stressed. We don't live in the natural environment. Like we're like just getting in your car is so much more stressful than walking through the woods, and that's how we're supposed to travel, right? Like, you see what I mean? So then I do. Yes, So the pain was my choice because I can't. There's something about the pain pills with like OxyContin.
Yes.
My body felt worse when I took those than with the pain. So I was willing to live with the pain. You know what I mean? And then, so I chose to live with the pain. Probably wasn't the smartest thing, but I got through it. It's fine. And then, I jumped on BPC 157.
Injectable or pill? The pill I don't think does much. The pill in typical standards will go into the gut, and it can actually help heal the gut, right? But there's a brand that's called Metabolic Elite. I actually am on the board for all disclosure, and they have a liposomal tablet that wraps it and allows it to get into the blood. So it's a carrier. It gets through the gut. It'll get into the bloodstream, and you chew it in your mouth. And I was using I just doubled the dose of that BP tablet, and everyone's pretty impressed how fast things are healing. My scar looks really good, and I don't tell the doctors or the PTs what's going on, right? I just say, I'm just a fast healer. You know what I mean? So, and then I take like systemic enzymes. If people look those up, those just include with the chemical reaction. They can help clean the scarring out. And then, plenty of fish oil and turmeric along with those to make sure, that things are healing very well. Obviously, I didn't use too much cold as I should. Maybe I should have used a little bit more, but I just wanted to. And then I'll do a ton of things like photobiomodulation on the knee, right, to speed up the cellular the light?
Yeah, low level laser therapy. I did a ton of that. I also stim. I ran stim through it in low levels, like 10s, just to. Because the theory is that if you stim a device, I'm not talking to stimulate the muscle. I'm talking to basically just recharge the cells with electrons, okay, so that they have a base and they can speed up the healing process. And what you do is I just crossed this TENS unit I had. I just turned it up to where I could barely feel it, and I would let it run current through there for about an hour. And that speeds up the healing process, the chemical reactions. And if you look up, quantum biology and you start reading into that, that's where I got most of that from.
What sounds like a little John Wellborn-ish. I think Charlie Francis gave him like a intense
That makes sense.
protocol for after he.
Are you there?
Yeah, you guys hear me? Froze for a second. Might freeze a little bit with 3 people on Zoom. Let's hang tight here. Okay, you guys hear me?
Hey, he's back.
Yeah.
All right. Woo. Technology. I might be. The universe may not be able to handle all the brain power. So I was gonna go to Mike and say, Mike, what is I've known you for like 20, close to 25 years
Yeah, that's
now.
right.
What has changed, either from your experience and like all this research you guys did for the book, with regards to, and also as we've gotten older, with regards to healing injuries, getting the body to like come back versus, oh, it's hurt, it's just hurt forever. What are you doing differently than when we met 20 plus years ago? 02, I think we met. 03.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I would say the biggest difference in what I do on the practical side is it probably looks more, I would say, kind of woo-woo now than it used to. 20 years ago, for sure, I was like, oh, there's no studies on it. I'm not trying any of this, weird kind of woo-woo shit. But the longer you have practice doing things on yourself and on clients and trying things, because at the end of the day, if there's not a lot of research on something, you obviously want to make sure it's safe. You want to make sure you're not doing any harm. But if there's not much of a potential downside, there might be some upside. So one of the things I've used a fair amount is a Dolphin. It's a microcurrent system. So you have a little device in each hand. You can pass current from one device to the next. I had an NDA with the creator of it for like a year and a half. Great guy. I can't say I know a ton more now about how exactly it works, but for like scar stuff, it seems to make a huge difference. Again, there's some research published on it. They're working on publishing more research. But I'd say, 20 years ago, like if someone had shown me that, I'd be like, get out of here with that. That's just kind of crazy. And the other part too, I think, is just basic philosophy of the body actually wants to heal itself and wants to be healthy. So what are we doing that is just sort of preventing it from doing it? Obviously good stuff like, basic nutrition, you need the building blocks, but, things like, sleep and stress and related to stress, just as soon as I can get any local stress on the area that's safe without doing any damage, obviously make sure you've got clearance from your physician, your PT, etc. I'm going to try to load that as safely as I can, because I think that in the past I would have probably not done that. But now with just maybe isometric, so I busted my foot in 2015 pretty bad. So even
like
just
what, a bone or fat or like a
I
tendon
spiraled
in
my
the
whole
foot?
ankle snowboarding.
Mm-hmm.
Not recommended. So I had the whole cast in it. It's the size of a freaking cantaloupe and stuff. But as soon as I could even just move my toes, I was doing
Right.
isometrics with my big toe, and it was literally like. So just thinking about what you can do safely for loading, because that's going to be the stimulus to remodel that tissue kind of back to where you want. And the last part too is just not being so much of a meathead bonehead. Like, just it's going to take time. Just be a little bit slow. Don't really push it. You're not going to get back in a couple of weeks. So just do a little bit better each day. And if you do just a little bit better each day, that's going to compound over time. And not trying to look for these, massive changes in a short period of time. Just be a little bit more patient.
If we like look back, I think it was in the 70s, Bill Starr, maybe it was later, Bill Starr wrote an article on like coming back from a pec tear or a pec strain. And he said like the next day you should be benching with the bar and getting blood flow to force in new oxygen and nutrients. So let's say it's a muscle strain or joint strain, and I'm looking at triphasic. You mentioned isometrics. But then it makes me think of this question for you guys. I think maybe I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure you guys and Cal, you've always said the eccentric overload is what remodels the tissue. So if I'm injured, I mean, I'm too weak to even
Yeah.
heavily eccentric. So, but let's say it's not muscular. Let's say it's like like the rotator cuff. Like I'm dealing with like rotator cuff. It feels like a strain, and there's points that hurt, and I don't have the best range of motion. What are you doing in those cases? If it's like joint related, muscle related, is there a difference? Are you going ISO, or do you want to
Yeah.
say, hey, fuck it, let's fucking do this eccentrics?
Yeah. No, I like ISOs because there's so much variability. You can go low level ISO, right? You can work capacity. Like when I see people come back from injuries and they get cleared, there's two major problems once they get cleared that I have actually when I test people. And one is capacity at high velocities, right? They don't have the work capacity that they had before the injury, right? Because and when I said high velocity, but the high velocity part is I'll give you an example. We had a kid with had a contact ACL knee to knee 2 years ago, and when they cleared her on the isokinetic device, she was a 13% deficit, so they cleared her, which is fine. But then when she ran at high velocity, she was in the 30% deficit when she's running at 6 meters per second from the left leg producing force to the right leg producing force. So, and then when she went to change directions, she was close to 40% deficit from right to left leg. But they cleared her to play sports. And when I showed them this, and I had the
Was
results.
this your PTs at the university?
Yeah, PTs and doctors. But and their tests were fine because it was isokinetic, right? It was slow velocity, and she'd been training that. So 13% is acceptable in my book. But when they do things at high velocity, the way she's going to play sports, she was above 30% deficit. Like that. And then once I showed them this, they pulled her out of being cleared. Mm-hmm. And it was a short time. It was only 2 weeks to get that 30% back up because she has a strength base, right? If you have
doing what? Like, how do you get it back in 2 weeks to fix that? You just
train at that high velocity, right? Is what I'm saying. It's like, so she does tons of change of direction, ton of high speed, like, and we do the plyometrics with the bands, like the accelerated bands hooked to the ceiling. So she could work at high speeds because, and I don't know if it was a high speed skill problem. I think it was just she hadn't worked at high speeds yet, on the rehab. So when they rehab, how often do they work at high speeds, at high velocities? So, and then stopping at high velocities obviously is a skill within itself that we all know here.
My experience with the high school athletes who get injured is I posted this on Twitter or X like a year or two ago, and Kelly Starrett texted me. He's like, thank you for blowing up Twitter with all physical therapists. I said, my question was, to all my PT friends out there, is it common for an athlete to get an ACL surgery and then 9 months later be unable to perform a bodyweight squat? Of course, I know the answer is no, but dude, people were bugging out. But what I've seen is, especially girls soccer, they tear an ACL in the middle of the season, late September, early October. We're middle of the season. I don't see them until June, spring training, and they can't even do a full bodyweight squat. And I'm thinking to myself, I tore my ACL 21 years ago. 2 weeks later, I'm doing walking lunges, and I'm thinking to myself, there's no way physical therapy is worse 20 years later. And I was just shocked that there's such a difference in what they're doing that I said to myself, a first grader would know 9 months after ACL surgery, you have to be able to do a full range bodyweight squat. I was just shocked that they didn't. My doctor, I remember, took my crutches away. On my first, he said, you have to load the ligament. I'm taking your crutches away like 5 days after surgery, maybe even earlier. I was like, I can't walk. He's like, you have to walk.
Yeah. I'm more in that side. Like I got my own personal experiences. Right? I'll tell you a funny one. When I had rotator cuff about a decade ago, surgery, they put me in a sling. Day 2, I'm like, I can't wear this sling, so I'm just going to let my shoulder hang. Right. And I told the docs, like, hey, make sure you keep it in there, whatever, 5-6 weeks. So I go see the physical therapist about week 2. They gave me stuff to do. And then 2 weeks later, I went and saw him about week 2.5. And he looked at me, and I hadn't done 1 ounce of physical therapy yet. He gave me all this stuff to do. And he tested me. He's like, Cal, you got too much range of motion and your strength's too much. We think you're pushing your physical therapy too hard. I hadn't done 1 session. I left it hang outside of the sling. That's the only thing I did. So I never wore my. I think they may need to rethink everything they're thinking with physical therapy. I'm just going to be honest with you. And I don't recommend this for anybody. I mean, just for the record, I don't recommend this.
Just between us.
So at 2.5 weeks, I said, I'm not doing one thing of physical therapy like they tell me. For this total 6 weeks. And when at the end of the 6 weeks, they're like, you have phenomenal range of motion, you have phenomenal strength. And the only thing I did was let my arm hang beside my body.
So do you think because your body went to a natural posture, the mind said, hey, I don't think you're injured, and it sped up the healing process?
I think that sling just would have held me in a bad spot that weakened me so much versus my arm just walking as I moved was activating the muscles and they were starting to function. That's just my opinion, right? Mm-hmm. I'm just telling you, I think, and again, I don't recommend that for anybody. Do what your doctor says, but the results I got were crazy. And I'm not going to lie, after 4 weeks, I started doing things, just normal stuff with my arm in the right spots. But I'm just telling you, I didn't do I didn't do one external rotation. And I said my external rotators were extremely strong.
When did you come up with like the high speed band work for rotator cuff? Is that rotator cuff stability? It's all these different positions.
Yeah. Well, it kind of started probably in 2008.
Yeah, I feel like the videos that I look at could be pretty old.
Well, because it was like the biggest thing with that whole concept of doing high speed, high stuff was that I've always tried, like Medvedev identified that the best athletes in the world could relax their muscles faster than everybody. We're talking the gold medalists versus people that were on the Olympic team. So we're not talking couch potatoes to the gold medalists, because there's not that much difference between the couch potato and the Olympic medalists on contraction speed. There is, however, relaxation speed, huge amounts of differences, even with the best on the Olympic team, some of the good ones on the Olympic team, to the best athletes in the world. Now, there's 4 parts to that, in my opinion. But the question for me was always, how do I train that? So then by doing the high-speed oscillatories and the fact that my athletes got better at them, because people think, oh, the band's doing all the work. Well, when the athlete first started on day 1, they're doing 12 reps. And a month later, in the same 5 seconds, they're doing 21 reps, twice as fast. The bands aren't facilitated. So then I'm like, I am actually teaching the muscles to relax. So when I eventually confirmed that I was teaching the muscles to relax, which is the number one quality in the best athletes in the world, and that actually has to tie in with the brain control and everything, but I was able to buy a tensiomyograph. It's a device that will measure how fast the muscles relax, right, to the response of an electric shock. And I found people that walked into my training system, never trained in it before, tested them, and then they went through that high speed cycle, would be my high speed oscillatory band work. And when we retested the muscle, the speed at which their muscle relaxed was as much as 20 to 25% greater. So we knew we had a better athlete. And the reason for that is if the muscles that's supposed to relaxes faster, all the muscles in the entire area can do a better job. They're not fighting the tension, so they can be more powerful with even less contractions. And that's the magic when you see an elite athlete do like I had a world-class sprinter in here, female, and I had a bunch of my pro athletes. And when they're most of them were men, they were pro women hockey players. But when they saw that world-class athlete take off, it was like a violent dancer. You know what I mean? Because, but everything is so smooth. She literally, everyone in the gym stopped when she took off on her first sprint because they're like, what is this? Like, then they're going, what is this for human being, right? And it's the fact that she can relax her muscles so fast, right? And now it goes back to the stress level, Zach, and Mike can jump in here. If you're sympathetic and you're stressed all the time, it will actually decrease that ability to relax. So you're all amped up and you're too excited or done too much caffeine that day. That smoothness goes away because you can't relax your muscles fast. You see what I mean? So it's a combination. And the best athletes in the world, in my opinion, have a few qualities. They can relax their muscle fast. They can go from a sympathetic state, let's say they're in the squat rack, and they can drop their heart rate super fast when they're out. So they have control of that interaction of the parasympathetic and the sympathetic system. They go up and down very fast on the global part of the body. The other quality was that because they can relax their muscles, their power, the relative power to kilogram ratio is so high. The best athletes I've seen is that they have the amount of power they can produce on a kilogram ratio of their body weight is phenomenal. But to have that, you have to have control of your brain to be able to switch back and forth, to stress, to relax back. I'm talking in between sets. And then that relaxation quality. Those are two huge qualities that you have to have.
Mike, I got a question for you guys on triphasic training too. You know, why, Mike, I think you mentioned like you had done all this research. Then you were like, this research is, can't remember if you said it's no good. I'm redoing all the research. Why was the initial research you didn't like it or didn't feel good about it?
So on the TRIPHASIC 2 book, we actually started, 9 years ago.
Yeah.
And we ended up about 3 years ago, I ended up just shit canning everything because one, Cal had so much new stuff that I wanted to incorporate. And then two, I didn't like the flow of how it was. So to me, like when you get a book, which is I think of it as a system, right? And so, Cal's got a ton of great systems, but for someone who isn't exposed to that system, hasn't been around, it can be a little bit harder to wrap your head around. Mm-hmm. So the hardest part was figuring out, okay, how do we get this in kind of a nice linear fashion? Because people tend to think in linear anyway. And so we ended up having like the turn on section, which is, your warm up, your training, which is the new training methods, the Supermax method, other methods, and then transfer. So you have your 3 phases, triphasic again. And then within that, we had each component so that someone can pick up the book and go, yeah, my athletes are pretty strong. I want to look at the transfer section. And then there's a bunch of different components that they can drop into their program. So I felt like the first one was much more of the system of triphasic and had a lot more programs that were very specific. This one is a little bit more, how do you go from warm-up all the way to transfer? And yeah, there's definitely programs in there. We've got full programs in the whole PDF and everything. But taking each one of these concepts in a way that people could take it out and go, oh, wow, angular shank method. Oh, I'm going to apply this to my program now to increase my transfer with athletes. So kind of taking more of those subcomponents that a coach could literally pick up a book, open up to page 210, go, hey, that's a cool concept, read 2 pages on it, and then actually start doing it on Monday.
I feel like then, as a coach myself, if I do that, which I've done it, you're just kind of cherry picking. You're not like really digging into it. And so I was thinking about this too, guys. Remember the Polish weightlifting video that came out on YouTube around 08, 09, 2010? The black and white video?
Who was that of the training hall?
But they start off training outside, like doing kind of cross country running.
Yeah. The weightlifting video. Yes. The weightlifting. Yeah.
It could have easily been a training video for wrestlers,
right?
They're doing gymnastics, but then you see videos of them doing like the overload eccentrics, where there's 2 guys lifting the bar. He does an eccentric deadlift.
Yeah.
I wonder. Like, I'm not sure when that video was filmed. Maybe the
70s?
Yeah,
70, 80,
70s, 80s. So when we were basically kind of kids, I wonder how long they did their phase for. How long did they test these overload eccentrics for? What like, where did you guys, because I know I jump around a bit, but Cal, I brought this up to you when I was bodybuilding. One of the coaches in our gym had me and these two other guys do it. And it was, I don't know, I think I was able to survive because I was so kind of crazy, but I
Yeah.
wasn't on any drugs. My two other partners were on heavy duty drugs, but we would, they probably read about it from Charles Poliquin, who had probably gotten his hands on overseas research paper. But long story short, I don't know if you remember the story. If we were doing a main lift, you would hit like 8 to 12 reps. Then somebody would add about 35%, and you would do three negatives.
Yeah.
And so let's say it was an incline Smith. If I could do 2 plates, I'd max out to 8 to 12. They'd add a plate, and I would fight it. But we did it on seated calf raises. We did it on the leg press, which was dangerous as all fuck. We did it on tricep push downs, like doing it, then they add weight. We did it on benching, which was extremely dangerous. And I don't recall how, I think we went quite a long time with it, but I just remember it was brutal.
Oh, yeah.
So, like, how did you decide 2 weeks is the phase length?
Yeah, well, like, and none of this is new, right? People have done isometrics, and you'd see it talk about. But what I found was that in the 2 weeks to 3 was the window where I would see my athletes adapt to it, and then I wasn't getting at 2 weeks like the last Friday they would do 2 to 3, whatever it may have been. Like, then I didn't see any more benefits out of it, and that might not be the same for a normal person who's not able to adapt to stress as fast. So you might want to have them go 3 to 4 weeks if it's their first time, and if it's a client or somebody but athletes seem to adapt for 2 to 3 weeks really fast. And then you're going, okay, I'm doing all this extra heavy loading, and I don't see them getting better at holding this load. Because, the first Monday, and we do it 3 days a week. The first Monday, you're like, okay, they can handle this. And the Friday, like, they may be up 50 pounds just because they're learning the skill. And then the next Monday, they were up more, and then maybe week 3 they could. But then at the end of week 3, I was like, I don't see any more benefits. So that's really where it all came back from. And then you'd switch to ISOs, and you'd see them get really strong in those deep positions, right? So then I didn't get any more bang out of the buck, it seemed like, after 2. So I was just like, well, I'm going to stay on 2-week protocols or 3, whatever the calendar can kind of dictate that. And some coaches like the ISO phase better. Like I know the throwing coach I had, one of them would say, hey, let's do the eccentric 2 weeks. But man, they seem to throw really well in an ISO phase. I'm like, okay. He's like, can we do that for 3? And no problem. We'll do it for 3, right? Let's try it for 3. So we tried it for 3. It worked. So the big thing is if I seem to drag it out, because remember, if you're doing eccentrics for 3 weeks, then you might not be able to do ISOs for 3 weeks. It's the sequencing. And all I did was sequence the eccentric and isometric methods. And I even heard Yuri Verkhoshansky talk about, well, ISOs are good, but we really haven't put it into a system. And this was in the early 2000s. On there was a translated phone call. And the thing was like, okay, that wasn't my goal, but when I started playing with all this stuff, it just seemed like the eccentric and the ISO, and it got better results than doing ISOs and eccentric. And not that you can't do it that way, but the best results I got for athletes was doing an eccentric model and then an isometric model.
I wonder if just the intensity psychologically is like, after 2 weeks, like, I got fucking changed something, right?
Well, yeah. Well, the other thing people don't realize, Zach, let's say you're going to hold eccentric for 10 seconds on a lift, go down, right? And then you do 10 seconds on the ISO, the same lift. The intensity in the ISOs is higher and theoretically more volume because you're going to your weakest position and holding it for 10 seconds. Where when you're doing the eccentric, Does that make sense? You start at the top and do a 10 count down. You've only hit the weakest position in the last 2 seconds. So it's actually a buildup to more intensity in the iso phase. Because when I tracked heart rates, the eccentric phase is awful and brutal, but the isometric phase, the heart rates doing the same program, just doing an isometric versus eccentric, the heart rates were much, much higher. So then I knew the training volume was higher, even though you're doing the same reps and sets in both programs. So it's like you increase the stress with the eccentrics, but then the load and the volume in the isos, even though you're doing the same lift, goes up. Because I registered that with heart rate, and then it really made sense once you think through the biomechanics of it.
Let me ask you guys a question on this. It's probably in the book, and I don't know if I came across it yet. And you just brought up, because you said the 10 count eccentric. Well, I don't have enough equipment to have everybody doing 10 counts. I train, especially if I'm at my high school, they get distracted. So I do a 5-second eccentric. Yeah. Is that not enough?
No.
Not enough?
No, it works, man. It depends on the lift. Like my bicep curl, because I'm a coach and I do arms a lot, right? The bicep curl needs a 5-second. But then other things, I actually like 5 seconds better. I'd rather do 2 5-seconds that, like let's say on a lift, than I would do a 10-second. Yeah. So.
Okay. And then, what the heck was I going to ask you guys? So the eccentrics, you're okay with that on 5. And then what I'll do is I won't do like a whole. So if we're doing eccentrics on squats, I'm not doing eccentrics on benching in the same training cycle. The next training cycle, I do like a 3-week mini cycle with high school athletes.
Sure.
The main lift is kind of like an 8. Then week 2 is a 5. Week 3 is a 2 or 3. But for isometrics, I'll tend to do like 5 reps of a 5 count. Then the next week it might be like a 6, 4, 2 reps. But I don't bunch them together. I just feel like their emotional state is not good with it. Like you're at Minnesota, you're at a high level Division I. Just like when I was at Rutgers, they could handle emotionally different. I feel like the emotions could block the effect of a training if somebody doesn't agree with it.
100%. No, Mike and I've talked about that. Like this whole human part of this is a factor, and I think that's why so many people, people think, hey, I do triphasic. No, you don't do Cal's program. Right? You just took the concepts of triphasic and added into any program. That's why I think the triphasic, the original, exploded, because it's just concepts you can add. And high school coaches do one lift, like you talk about, only for triphasic, where Cal does his entire lift. That's fine, but my kids have a training age and my kids are older, right? Yeah. So it's all beneficial. And like some of the coaches that email me say, hey, I only do one lift for triphasic in here, but look at my results. And I'm like, man, I wish I got those results. You know what I mean? Like, but they have malleable kids that are unbelievable. They're getting huge benefits out of a triphasic cycle, and they just do one lift per day. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, and it's really, yes, it's about your, it's about the situation. I was just talking to somebody about if I took over an NFL team, and we did our speed development plan, I would be like, well, what do the guys like to do for speed? And we'll integrate and mix. Like, it doesn't matter what level you're at, whether you're working with an individual client or working with a whole team of high schoolers or college, like, you do have to make it so that people enjoy it to some level and they think it's going to benefit. Right. We all know this. You, me, Mike, like, we're all in that level. Right?
What do you think is the most, it's a tough question for you guys. Out of the 3 phases, what do you think is actually, if where somebody's time crunch, should they focus on eccentrics? Should they focus on isometrics? Should they focus on the overspeed? And by the way, those when you do the jumps with the bands, Cal, was that you thinking of the future method? Didn't the Russians call that with weights? They would add weight, and the guy would they did the reverse band bench press. Remember Louis would do it? They call it the future method. Is your jump with the reverse band essentially the future method, or no?
That wasn't for me. Mike, did you ever see that 8-9 camera system I had? I don't know. Yeah, you know what
I was actually one of the subjects in it.
Yeah. So Zach, what happened is I had a 9-camera system that we were able to use. I think it was around $200,000 back in the early 2000s, right? And it was a big, huge computing thing. Mike, you're an engineer. You were able to run that stuff really easy, right? Like,
No.
I couldn't turn it on, Mike. I literally couldn't turn this device on. But Zach, the point was Mike knows what I'm talking about. And it had 9 cameras set up in a room. And when I analyzed people running and skating, Zach, the speed at which the knee and the hip extended after the third step, and we analyzed weight room stuff, I couldn't mimic the speed at which the hip and the knee traveled on the third step of running or skating. So I'm like, well, what am I doing in the weight room besides the first, second, and third step to mimic it? Nothing. I couldn't mimic the fourth, fifth, sixth step in a sprint. So that's when I came up with the unloaded plyometric concept. And then I had done it for a couple of years, and I think I saw an NSAA talk from a guy from Australia that was doing it also, and I'd never released that. So I don't know if I'm the first one to ever invent that, but I know he was hooking things to the ceiling and looking at force plate jumps. I saw a presentation on it after I'd been doing it for a couple of years, and I thought I got great results. And really...
Cal, but do you ever... like play devil's advocate on yourself? I know you do, and just say, well, they're moving so fast in the sport, and now I'm going to add more of that high speed in the weight room. Is it too much for the body to handle? Do you ever think like that and say, chill out on it?
Well, yeah.
Or just say, no, we have to take the body to a new level.
As the story was told, we had some great results when we would be peaking athletes at above 90. And then one year, about third year here at Minnesota, I ran it by my track coach, like, Coach, the weightlifters peak at 80, 90%. Why don't we try to peak at like 75? 55 to say, because it's closer to what the sport's doing. And my track coach was like, you know what? Let's give it a shot. So I actually did it with swimming too. And I think the swim team came up with, and this is outstanding, right around 90% lifetime PRs when we did that.
Wait, say it again. What do you mean peak at 75% instead of 90? So
like when I ran a cycle right before the league championship, instead of because a lot of people back in the early 2000s and 90s were saying, hey, we hit 92% a week, 2 weeks out before Well, what I did was we just switched it and did like a 3-week cycle of between 55 and 75% of your load instead of peaking with a 90% or a 95 to go heavy, right? And we got better results.
Why? Because they're moving fast?
I think they're moving fast, and Mike and I have talked about this. It's just the 90% is more of an irritant and a strain on the nervous system versus the 55 or the 75%. Like Louis, it's not Circumax, right? But just it's Louis, dynamic day with bands. You're just peaking. You're just mimicking the speed at which they might be competing at.
I also find
specificity.
Yeah, it's really specificity, right? Like that's what it is.
When somebody's run down, I wonder if this is wrong of me. When an athlete feels like beat up, I'm like, don't go heavy. Just go all speed today. Why? Because I don't want you to even get psyched up. I want you to know you could do it, but just move it fast.
Yes, it's perfect.
Now let me play devil's advocate on myself and this thought process.
Can I take my shirt off before I answer this? Okay.
A coach said this. He said, I feel like athletes they could jump higher and run fast. He's like, but they're not really strong. Now, if I am a contact, you wrestled, Cal, okay, I can't deadlift and squat as heavy, but I'm jumping more and I could sprint faster. I don't where the fuck are we going? I don't even know what's right anymore. The sport of wrestling has changed, by the way. You went through a system when you guys were number one of the country. J-Rob was there. That was a very head-to-head style, combative nature. Now we see this funk, rolling, don't let go of stuff. We see sport just getting more
evolved.
I don't even know if the word is flow, but it's very acrobatic in wrestling. Even soccer. So is these higher levels of strength just not needed anymore?
Well, well, it's a happy medium, right? Because you need to be able to have some level of strength to perform that, right? So, and then like in Mike and I talk about like you do need strength to remodel the tissue. You need to be strong to remodel the tissue so that you don't get injuries and you're less likely to get those injuries and inflammation. And then, but Zach, the biggest thing is I think that we know that the more specific we can get, the better the person can be on the field. Now, lifting at a heavy load can slow somebody down. Like I think we all can agree that, unless you're dealing with young kids, like a young high school kid can lift heavy most of the summer and probably just keep getting faster because
I
that's what they
say
need.
you if you lift heavy and don't jump, sprint, and do dynamic effort, then yes, you could get slower. Or you lift heavy and do not practice your sport, right? I mean, crap, I think we're
Yeah,
freezing
I think of
again.
it as like at some point you're gonna have diminishing returns, right? If you've got people that are just super weak, they just need to get stronger. And at some point you're gonna have this
Boom.
nice response of just getting stronger, doing your sport, doing your sport. But at some point, you know, taking your back squat from 415 to 500, that at that point you're probably not going to get as much of a return from that. And you may even be teaching your nervous system to potentially be slower, and that may have a detrimental effect
That's
to
where
transfer
the
onto the field.
that's where tracking velocity comes into play.
Right.
Where
Now,
the
if you could do a
guys,
lighter
yeah,
load and you can, Kel's talked about this too, like move it faster,
yep.
like, take that load, take that person, drop them to maybe 315 and have them move it really fast. They're already strong enough. They probably just need more of the power and speed. That component then is probably going to transfer better to their sport, again, depending upon what their sport is.
I think the answer to so many things is it depends.
Yeah.
Like there's
If you can
so
only squat the bar, then you you need to get stronger.
right. There's really no blanket answer, but in the high school world,
Yes.
um, the reality is now, Dr. Mike, is that kids and their parents seek out speed and agility, quote unquote,
Yes.
and the kids don't have strength, they don't have stopping power, they don't do any eccentric work or heavy eccentrics. In my mind, I like to use it so we could build that deceleration on the field. But Cal was mentioning like to you need those heavy eccentrics to remodel the tissue. So I don't know if Cal, can you hear us or no? I think he shut his camera down. What do you think of that, Mike? Like just give us the simple explanation or simple definition of what does remodel tissue mean from heavy eccentrics?
Yeah, so when you're doing really heavy eccentrics, the actin-myosin, so like basically the cross bridging that goes on in the muscle tissue itself, the actual moving components, those can actually get kind of ripped apart. And the body will then come back in and it'll try to fix those, but it's going to go back in just like when you repair and remodel a muscle, it's going to make it a little bit bigger and stronger. So the nice part is, just like any type of weight training, just happens to be more specific for eccentrics because of the load. You're now dealing with tissue on multiple levels that is just a little bit bigger and stronger than what it was before. So if you look at it like your change of direction, like you watch a lot of kids do change of direction, it may not necessarily be a skill thing. It may just be that they're so weak in that deceleration phase that
They can't put on
they
the
look like
brakes.
moving blobs of jello. Like they just can't hold that position, no matter how much you cue and no matter how much good coaching you give them. They just don't have the strength prerequisite to hold that position, much less change of direction in and out of it.
I like that definition. I'm going to do some rapid fire Q&A with you guys, give quick answers, and then I'm going to let you guys go because I went over the hour. So I'm going to have some selfish questions that I want to hear. Okay. My daughter strained her soleus playing tennis. Do we go spring ankle? Do we pump out calf raises? Do I buy a seated calf machine? Do we go stim? Give me a quick 30-second answer by any of you guys.
Mike, you want that one or you
My
want?
bias is, without knowing anything else, I would look at isometric work and I would have 12 to 15 grams of collagen, 40
Oh,
to 60 minutes before the exercise. This is based off of Keith Barr's work. because I'm willing to bet there's a lot of soft tissue that got kind of messed up in that process. So we want remodeling of muscle tissue. Obviously, she's going to have protein, but I think collagen can help with the remodeling of that soft tissue component of it also.
He went with the
Yep.
supplements. I like it.
Yeah. And then what I would recommend is make sure, I think kids, my opinion, in Eastern medicine or, Chinese, like the adrenals are tied to the calf muscle. So make sure that you get it. And these kids are always stressed. Make sure they get calf massages twice a year. And then along with that calf massage, I do the lower hamstring too, because if the calf is tight, the lower hamstring becomes tight. Yep. And then, yes, I would do it to spring ankle. And then I think the big one, obviously with the spring ankle, that DPO position is important. And I had another thing. I think definitely the tens. Like I would just pump some tens through there just to get everything like reorganized and even taking tension out. Maybe even tensing on the way to the. You could put the blacks, I think, at the top of the calf and the reds at the bottom, and then of her foot, and just let it run through there because that actually will relax the calf to a more relaxed state. So before she goes, yeah.
Yep. Started doing the tens today, rolled out yesterday, massage set up this weekend. Collagen was not. I wasn't even thinking about that. So,
bone broth too.
Dr. Mike 1, Cal Dietz 0.5.
Okay, yeah. Well, I mean, wouldn't you throw in vitamin C a little bit, Mike? Yep. Right?
That's based on the research. Yes.
Okay. Right, now it's a tie. We're up there.
No. Mike showed me that stuff. So yeah. I was just supporting him on that.
Yep, that's very good. So, all right, another selfish question. Rotator cuff strain. It's tight. I'm 49. Give me some ideas. I've been trying to do 100 things and still, working it. Should I be implementing triphasic work with, bamboo bars, iso holds? Should I go overhead? Are we looking at mobility? What are you looking at here?
Well, I think for me, when I'm in the same boat, right? So I just do, I mainly would be an iso. And then I try to do the high functioning oscillatories, and I don't have to get crazy with them. And if that doesn't work for you, just cut your arm off. Right? I think that's where you need to go. And then find the positions that hurts and do isometrics there. You could take yourself through that and just, I find that if I find that position, I do isos and things get a little stronger. Usually it helps a little bit, but and the systemic inflammation in that area might be something to look at.
Yes.
I'm a big one, just running stem in any area that hurts, like the tens, not the stem, but the tens unit. I'm a big fan. I think tens is such a big tool that have been left by the wayside.
Is tens different than the power dot? Power dot is a stem?
Well, I think they have a tens setting. I don't know the power dot. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, check and see. I think there's stem unit, there's muscle stem, and there's tens.
Yeah.
And there's two different. Yeah.
They have different things on the app. Okay, let's see what Dr. Mike's got.
Yeah, I mean, I think Hal would probably agree with this too. I would look at doing something like RPR, reflexive performance reset.
I can't believe we didn't bring up RPR.
Yeah, and then I would, especially pectoralis, sternum, behind the head for glutes. Ooh. And then I would especially check if it's the external rotation you're missing on your right. I would check your left hip for missing internal rotation. Because a lot of times just putting the hip in internal rotation and then just retesting that range of motion, not all the time, but a lot of time in athletes, they'll get a lot of range of motion back just from there. So now okay, maybe the root cause is more hip related than it is shoulder. It's just showing up in the shoulder as an issue.
It's so funny how we know, but then we forget that it may not be the shoulder. It's friggin' coming from my ankle or this or that.
Yeah.
Oh my God. All right, Mike 10, Cal Dietz 3.5.
Yeah.
But here's the last question and a chance to make a comeback. No pressure. I want to hear what's going on with that hunting lodge. Are you hunting? What does it look like? What are you, eating the food that you kill? Give me some Rambo First Blood stories from the hunting lodge.
Well, I'm trying to hunt with only a knife, but that doesn't work very well.
Cal Dietz, 20 points.
So then I just drive them over with the side by side. So then I eat them. So, no, I mean I do get out now and then, but to do hunting, I enjoy it. And for me, it's just more about getting in the woods, right? And I don't like to do hunting where I have to sit and just be quiet, right? I'd rather walk down a trail with you and Mike and we're bird hunting, and if a bird shows up, we shoot the thing and enjoy it, and that's it. But like, I'm more of about I like to talk when I hunt, right? You know what I mean? Because I don't have to hunt this. I can go buy this at the grocery store. It's not about, you know what I mean? I got to feed my family from this kill, so to say the least.
I imagine the food in Minnesota at the supermarket, and Mike, you're in Texas and Minnesota. I got a buddy in Texas. He said the supermarkets are very good. Like, I go to an Amish or a Mennonite to buy most of my meats. He's like, dude, you don't have to do that in Texas. He's like, we're set up with some high quality meats in a normal supermarket. So is that the case in Minnesota as well?
Yeah, you have to look for it, but there's definitely like free range meats and things like that for sure.
Like real stuff, not bullshit marketing stuff.
Yeah, and there's a lot of farmers. Like, we buy as often as we can from a farmer in Wisconsin, and we just buy the cow. We pay for it to get processed, and it comes out to be almost the same price if we were to buy it in the store. You just need a place to store like half or quarter of a cow at once, but that works out really well.
Yes. Former wrestling, well, he is a wrestling coach. His brother is the wrestling coach at NC State, Pat Popolizio. I don't know if you know of him, but his brother Frank is in upstate New York, and his farm is in his backyard, and he sells, I think, half cow, whole cow. But I went to his house, and I see the cows. He has one of those, like, I think it's a blend, like a YU cow blended with something else, and just And you know what? I was thinking of this. Are you going to Winter Strong, Cal?
I can't with the season and make it, you know what I mean, with sports. But I'd love to. But
I was thinking about this with talking about hunters. When I was at Winter Strong, the hunters are not fat because they're eating elk and just like lean meats. Like, nobody's fat. They look healthy, and they're our age. They look younger because of just, I guess, walking, hunting, and getting out. Getting out in nature must be even more powerful than ever before because of how overly connected we are to all this.
100%. No question.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Last question, guys. Okay. Last question. What's a question that, I listen to your podcast. I feel like people kind of same questions. I hope I shook things up a little bit. What's a question people should be asking you that sometimes you're like, why does nobody ask us about this topic? Whatever it is there something somebody should be asking you that they're not showing interest in that should be? Is it supplements? Is it nutrition? Is it one of the training principles from TRIPHASIC?
You want to go ahead, Mike?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, how do you come up with new methods? And this might be a question for Cal also. I think there's a lot of what I call parrots in the industry. People just parodying what somebody else said. And you ask them, well, hey, why did you do that? Oh, because Coach so-and-so said. Okay, cool. But why? Like, you've studied their philosophy, whatever. Like, what do you as an individual, yes, you may use some of their stuff, which is great, but what do you think about it? And so I think there's not as much original thought. And, obviously using other people's stuff is a great starting point. I've learned tons of stuff from tons of people in the industry all the time. But then what is kind of the logical conclusion of that? Are there different ways you can tweak it and change it? And then how can you try that in a safe manner to kind of, just everyone, I think, wants to try to move everything forward. But it seems to be a lot of people are just kind of copying what someone else is doing, and they just seem to be okay with that forever.
I love that. Yeah. I mean, Mike is in the lead, Cal. I just want to put that out there.
Yeah. Well, like, I think the big one is that, and it goes along those lines, like, people don't ask me how I came to this conclusion. Right. And you're just like, man, I have, like right now, Zach, when I watch somebody run and there's a flaw in the running, I don't coach them to fix the flaw. I pull them on the table and I may test 30 to 40 different muscles in that area on that leg to find out what's not working and why that foot flipped the wrong way when they're running today. So then that teaches me what's wrong. And then I can then make some assessments, either figure out that, A, it's a foot bone that's out of place. Maybe it's a talus that caused this foot flip. That's not correct. But like that process of how I've learned and found so much stuff, like I just don't make shit up. Really, I test everything and I try to figure things out, which then creates more questions, which then allows me to create the stuff. Because people look at this and like, well, how'd you make this? You must be creative. I'm not. I find a bunch of things out that actually creates a problem, and then the solution is sometimes what people think I'm creative about. But I don't think I'm creative. I just fix a problem when I truly understand that there's a problem. And that's what I have to keep digging for. That's why when I come to work, I'm so excited most days, because I'm like, I got to find the solution for this problem. Why does this person do this? Why does the internally rotate and increase the external range of motion in the shoulder? Well, we know there's a spiral sling. We know there's a lateral sling. We know there's all these slings that can connect. So then Cal thinks I'm going through and I'm trying to find all the muscles that connects that internal hip up to that shoulder.
So, all right, dang it. I was like, that's got to be the last question. All right. So when you assess and you put them on the table, I've seen you do this. You like, you like do this crazy thing and you test all the things that work. Can you look at a physique and just see like not a lot of muscle here, posture here? Yep. Does that also give you some assessment?
Yeah, and really, it's really what's the best. It's not the muscle; it's the posture and the way they move, the walk, right? So like
running.
Yeah, when like I have athletes that I don't know what, like a pro athlete will hit me up like, hey, I got this problem. I'm like, I'm like, send me a video running. I'm like, all right, I can fix it. And they're like, no, I want to come see you. And I'm like, oh, okay. So they come and see me. They walk in. I see it. Yep, there it is. They get on the table. They're fixed in 2 minutes. But they've paid me for the whole day, so I hang out with them, right? Give them some stuff to do. But I'm like, dude, I saw it on the video, right? I don't need to actually, so, yeah. And Zach, I've only built that because I watch humans run every day, and then I pull them on the table to find out why are they running like that? Because that's a change. Something's changed, or that's a flaw. You know what I mean? So that's how I figured a lot of this stuff out. And that's why
RPR to fix them so quickly?
Yep. Well, let's say real quick, a guy runs with his right arm out. And then I know I can fix it with RPR so that he holds it in. But what I've done over the years is not RPR'd it. I've selected the best exercises to fix the problem, which the problem was in the lower shank in the foot. So I got to strengthen the foot with spring ankle. I got to strengthen the calf, the hamstring. And then when that thing becomes stable, the brain says, I don't have to hold the arm out to stabilize. I can just bring the arm in. So the hopes is that I fix the running flaw within the system. So that's, if people really dug into my programs in the Triphasic 2 book, they won't understand all that, but every exercise has been selected to fix a problem.
But what about on CoachTube? You have so many programs. You also have RPR. So what what would help them, like by reading Triphasic and then having a visual of it? Where would they go?
To figure that out. Start
putting things. I don't even want to say. Do we ever figure anything out? I always feel like shit. I don't even know anything anymore. What helps put it together?
To start the journey to put it together. Yeah, I think Triphasic 2 is an eye opener. And then honestly, RPR after that, because then you can say, well, because that glute pattern sequencing, I figured it out with RPR, just being able to muscle test. So there it is. Like I can muscle test muscles. That's what we teach in RPR. And then like Michael attests to this, like you can do an exercise, and if it's not friendly to that person, you muscle test them and it shuts the muscles off. Now it might be good for some people. Mike taught me this. Cal, he's like, some of these exercises are good for people, but there's others that it won't be good for. And is that a brain thing? I don't know. It might be an old injury, even from childhood, that you don't know you remember you had. So the body responds to things differently. So that's how you can actually individualize it. Mike was the first one to bring me onto that. Mike, that had to be about 12 years ago, now that I think about it.
Yeah, because I kept trying stuff on people and they would leave and then they would come back again. I'm like, hey, I fixed you. Why did you come back? And then I realized, like Cal was saying, uh-oh, I didn't test it standing. I didn't test it under a different condition.
Oh,
I didn't think it would change that fast. My assumption was I air quotes fixed you. You're good. I thought, yeah, maybe in a couple of weeks, couple months, whatever. And when I realized sometimes like standing up, just the act of gravity and shifting position was enough for all the stuff I had air quote fixed on the table to go away. And then I spent
yes.
like a year and a half testing everything and driving myself insane to find something that would hold under gravity, much less a heavy squat or heavy deadlift.
I think the answer is just to keep seeking answers and asking. And I do tell my coaches and interns, should question everything. Like, all right, we just laid out this program. Like, question it. Don't take it blindly. Do it
Right.
yourself. Cal, do you
Well,
remember when we were at Summer Strong? I was like, dude, did you see Mike Tyson run? You're like, no, I sent you the video, and it was like, I wish you could have tested him. It was,
yeah,
do you remember seeing like
yeah,
he was kind of like clawing at the air. He had no knee drive, which meant like, I don't know. To me, it looked like
yeah.
he had no hip flexion or extension. His legs like ran in circles, but he could
Here's a
still
loop.
box.
Oh, sure, right. But the catch with that one is if we could have cleaned up his gait, his overall general boxing skills, he would have drawn more power because everything below would have been fixed, right? You see what I mean? So it's bananas how over the years there's been all these assessments, and when they do it standing, like you can do a standing assessment, but the only assessment I really look at is walking. But it's not even the best for athletes. Sprinting is the best. And when I watch people sprint, every like major flaws can come out and things that you're going to see, from like neck adjustments that need to happen that we found to like hip displaced, like hips are off and rotated. You're going, running shows all of this, right? In my opinion. So the magic behind it all is, as a coach, is if you can keep learning, retesting people, especially with muscle testing, and you can learn muscle testing on YouTube right now, right? Like, hey, how do I muscle test the TFL? Well, you can just hold at this degree and then just retest, right? Now, I do recommend courses, but ultimately, you know what I mean? And that's the magic, I think, with RPR is that we can check a muscle. If it's not working, turn it on, have them retest, it worked, get up, move around, come back, it's still on. Great, we're in a better spot, right? Really, that's the magic behind it. Or they can, and they can do it themselves.
I love it. I love you guys. I love all this. Everybody, thanks for listening to Strong Life Podcast. TRIPHASIC 2 on Amazon, RPR, Google RPR. Get involved, get activated. Guys, hang tight so I could say goodbye to you. I'm just going to shut down the recording. Everybody, thanks for listening. Share it with friends. Question everything. Also, in the comments, who won the rapid fire Q&A?
Yeah.
Cal or
Right.
Dr. Mike, we'd like to hear. All right, guys,
Hey,
hang tight. Yeah, what do you got?
I would have done better with my shirt off. So next time we're doing it with my shirt off.
Oh, my God. All right, here we go.